This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. I want to thank a subscriber over on the website, Wendy, for sharing this information with everybody over on the website. And again, I want to thank everybody who's already a member of the website. I appreciate the people over there and for sharing information like this. Singapore just made it a crime to refuse a vaccination, which will include jail and massive fines for saying no. Now, we know during COVID last time how our government turned its back on its people, which it's done for a long period of time, in regards to free speech. Many of us were silenced. Many of us were shamed. Not that we give an actual crap about the sheeple who were shaming us, but a lot of us lost the ability to share vital information about what was really going on. Of course, we saw all the doctors that also lost their license for questioning what was actually being put inside of people's bodies. So does anybody out there think that it's a coincidence that the same time this law is passed, if you go over to Bill Gates's Facebook account, he was actually just in Singapore at the same exact time that the government of Singapore passed what looks like is going to be this prototype law that will probably be rolled out around the earth during the next outbreak, which could very well be towards the end of 2025. Now, we know that these nations have been conspiring with one another, trying to pass things like the Pandemic Treaty, where they're allowed to access information about people and track people and social distance and all those apps that they're trying to get you to put on your phone last time. And of course, they were demanding more and more authority over all of our lives. But let me read to you this law because there's a couple of things going on at once. At the same time that this story just broke in Singapore, we also are hearing of the first baby in the United States of America getting CRISPR treatment, which is customized vaccinations, which Donald Trump has promised to roll out. People need to pay attention to these stories. They're very important. So the Singapore government has just updated its laws to make it a crime to refuse mandatory vaccines punishable with prison time. The updates to the nation's laws open the door to criminal prosecution for members of the public who refuse to submit to government-mandated injections. Interestingly, the changes have emerged while Bill Gates has been visiting Singapore to meet with the nation's leadership. This week, Gates wrapped up his 2-day visit in Singapore. The trip included meetings with Singapore leaders and various speaking engagements. On May 5th, he announced at the Philanthropy Asia Summit 2025 that the Gates Foundation will open an office in Singapore. The organization's establishment of presence in Singapore was supported by the Singapore Economic Development Board. On the same day, Gates also met with Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, as well as senior ministers Lee Hsien Loong and Tee Chee Hean. Meanwhile, the new amendments to sections 47, 65, and 67 of Singapore's 1976 Infectious Disease Acts now mean that people who refuse to get vaccinated when directed to get vaccinated by the government would be considered criminals and face prosecution. As the text of Section 47 of the IDA states, in an outbreak or a suspected outbreak of any infectious disease in any area in Singapore, the Director General of Health may by order direct any person or class of persons not protected or vaccinated against the disease to undergo vaccination or other prophylaxis within the period specified in the order. In addition to the power conferred by subsection 1, where it appears to the Director General of Health that an outbreak of an infectious disease in any area in Singapore is imminent and it is necessary or expedient to do so for the securing of public safety. The Director General of Health may by order direct any person or class of persons not protected or vaccinated against that infectious disease to undergo vaccination within the period specified in the order. Any order made under subsection 1 or 2 may specify the person by whom and the manner in which the vaccination is to be carried out. where any order is made under subsection 1 or 2, the Director General of Health must cause notice of the effect of the order to be given in such a manner as the Director General of Health thinks necessary for bringing it to the notice of all persons who, in the opinion of the Director General of Health, ought to have notice of it. And again, don't forget, during that outbreak, how we saw our government strip us not only of our rights of free speech, but our rights of religious exemptions. Many people out there thought that they would just be able to say, look, I'm going to use my religious exemption here. I'm a Christian. We had people out there, we were talking Mark of the Beast and all these different things. And the government just held up a middle finger and said, you don't have a right to religious exemption. In fact, if you don't follow what we say, we will take your job away from you and you will not be compensated for it. So according to Section 51 of the same IDA, any person who contravenes any provision of this part or fails to comply with any notice given under Section 46 or order made under Section 47 shall be guilty of an offense. Section 65 of the IDA continues by outlining the alarming penalties in store for, quote, criminal anti-vaxxers who reject the dogma. Any person guilty of an offense under this act for which no penalty is expressly provided shall, A, in the case of a first offense, be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding $10,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or both. In the case of a second or subsequent offense, be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding $20,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 months or both. Under these new laws, people who refuse vaccines may be imprisoned for up to 6 months or receive a fine up to $10,000 or both for a first offense. Repeat offenders may be jailed for up to 12 months. In addition, Section 67 of the IDA exempts the Singapore authorities from any liability, with the text reading, no liability shall lie personally against the Director General of Health, the Director General of Public Health, the Director General Food Administration, or any health officer, adjunct health officer, port health officer, or police officer who, acting in good faith and with reasonable care, does or omits to do anything in the purported execution of this act. As such, members of the public and their families would not be able to sue the government if people are injured or killed by these forced vaccinations. The amendments have caused alarm for certain Singaporeans, including the People's Power Party. In a post on Facebook, one of the politicians, Derek Sim, lambasted the amendments, saying if you choose not to go for a vaccine during the next pandemic, you will be deemed to commit an offense. You will be criminalized. The penalty for first-time offense is 6 months and up to $10,000. Do people out there actually support this ridiculous law? In the lead up to Singapore's parliamentary elections on May 3rd, 2025, Sim campaigned against medical tyranny. Sim, who has a degree in biotechnology and vaccine manufacturing, actively campaigned at political rallies. He also appeared on national television, to advocate for medical freedom in the tiny city state. During the height of the pandemic, the Singapore government enacted various draconian measures coercing many Singaporean citizens were presented with two options: take the vaccine or lose their job, just like we had here in America. So how do we not expect these same types of laws to be put in America? Don't forget, your current supposed sitting president, was calling himself the father of the vaccine and was responsible for Operation Warp Speed, and up to a recent point had still been bragging about it for years after, every year that went by while Biden was in office. He said his greatest achievement was Operation Warp Speed. Now they've changed their story because they realize how many people, which I'm sure they're shocked about, actually turned on Donald Trump and turned on Big Brother because of how forceful they were with trying to get that in your body. Of course, the conservatives like to play the role, pretend like, well, we didn't mandate anything. We didn't force anything. That was the Democrats who forced everything. But we all know that the Republican mind control media was out there saying every single day, from Tucker Carlson to all the talking heads on Fox News, hey, well, I went and got it. I'm not telling you what you should do, but I think everybody, would be in their best interest to go and get it. Then, of course, we saw all of the nonsense that came from there in regards to people being stripped of their rights, specifically your right to speak against it, your right to free speech. You were labeled misinformation and disinformation. Of course, none of us were ever proven wrong. In fact, we were only proven right. And still to this day, there's people out there who are going to CVS and going to Walgreens, who are living in a different reality than the rest of us, who are still masking up, driving around in their vehicles. In fact, I saw somebody masked up just a few days ago, and I just dead stared at them in disbelief that this was a human being living in the same planet, or on the same planet, or on the earth, I should say, in the same location as me. I mean, it's mind-blowing. So those are the types of things that are in place. Bill Gates was just over there. Klaus Schwab was just over in Singapore as well. These are the things that they're going to start implementing. People out there think that all this stuff is over, but they don't realize that in order to be a part of this next wave and the Internet of Bodies and have brain-computer interfaces, these types of things are going to continue going forward. They just have to figure out how they can manipulate the public. And they realize that they can't manipulate the public, so what they'll have to do instead is quietly in the night, just like they did with the Patriot Act, start to pass these laws. Now, we saw upstate New York. What were some of the psychotic things that were going on there? Well, upstate New York, they were deciding if they had the ability to lock you in your home or come and take you out of your home if they thought that you might be somebody who was exposed to the virus, right? And none of these people held accountable at all for any of this. Now, the other thing was the U.S. baby. The baby in the United States of America received the first ever customized CRISPR treatment for a genetic disease. This is important to pay attention to because, remember, when Donald Trump took office on day one, he talked about curing cancer, and this has been their plan for a long time. These personalized vaccinations, which are supposed to be geared towards the specific individual. And then they say, well, we're going to use artificial intelligence, and within 48 hours, we'll be able to create your very own personalized vaccine, which will edit your genetic code. So the story here is that a baby was born with a rare and devastating genetic condition and has become the first person ever to be successfully treated with a personalized CRISPR therapy. After receiving 3 doses of the therapy in the past few months, the infant is now 9.5 months old and thriving, the doctor said. We want each and every patient to have the potential to experience the same results we saw in this first patient. Dr. Kirian Musunuri, a professor from, does any of these people ever have English names? Or, I mean, give me a break here. A professor for translational research at the University of Pennsylvania said in a statement, the promise of gene therapy that we've heard about for decades is coming to fruition, and it's going to utterly transform the way we approach medicine. Don't forget RFK, or health czar, who supposedly is fighting chemtrailing and he's calling out DARPA and he's anti-vax, was heavily invested financially in this CRISPR stock. So he had stake in it, and they wanted you to know that. The treated child, referred to as KJ, was born with severe CPS1 deficiency. The inherited condition is estimated to affect 1 in 1.3 million people worldwide. It's inherited in a autosomal recessive pattern, meaning a person must inherit 2 mutant copies of the gene, one from each parent, to develop the condition. The condition arises from mutations in the CPS1 gene, which codes for a protein the liver uses to process nitrogen compounds in the blood. The nitrogen generated as the body breaks down proteins needs to be processed and detoxified into a product called urea to be excreted in urine. The severity of CPS1 deficiency depends on whether the affected person has complete or partial absence of the gene's encoded protein. Those with the complete lack of the enzyme, like KJ, have the most severe form of the disease. This causes symptoms to show up shortly after birth, including unusual sleepiness, a poorly regulated breathing rate, unwillingness to feed, vomiting after feeding, unusual body movements, seizures, or coma. It goes on to talk about half of the children with this form of the condition die in early infancy. You're going to hear more stories about CRISPR saving lives because you're going to hear stories about personalized vaccines. They think that this is a way that they're going to be able to convince people to get vaccinated to cure things like cancer. And they're going to use propaganda to try to convince you that this is your own specific, unique one. No one in the earth is going to have the same exact vax as you. This is not produced on a mass scale by Pfizer. Don't be worried about it. Don't be nervous about it. You should go and get it. And of course, they're going to use cancer without ever explaining to you why everybody on the earth has cancer. So many people on the earth are sick because of the exposure to soft metals, which they'll never tell you about. They just constantly want you to think about it. They want you to show up in your pink shirt for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, even though I think everybody's aware by now. You know, we could stop doing these awareness. Oh, it's breast cancer, it's prostate awareness. Yeah, we're all aware. We're also all aware of how you dump soft metals and processed foods and you spray it on us from the sky every single day. And then you pretend like, oh yeah, we're going to do something about it. We're going to pass a law in Florida or Tennessee. Meanwhile, every day, the same people who live in those states are seeing those soft metals getting dumped on them from the sky. So you're going to hear more about these personalized vaccines. This is where artificial intelligence comes in, where they'll start talking about getting underneath your skin. And again, you've been conditioned into this with things like the Fitbit, all the technology you wear on your body that tracks your movements. They're conditioning you and have been conditioning you into getting this technology underneath your skin so that you could track everything that's going on inside your body. Remember, they've created a society of narcissists who are so obsessed with every single thing about themselves that they want to know how many times a day they breathe air, or how many times a day they take a step, or how many times a day they fart. I mean, they have all of this tech to really just monitor and track air. Oh, what's my blood pressure? How are my sleeping rates at night? It's all been part of the conditioning to get underneath your skin. So we have the CRISPR treatment for genetic disease. Obviously, talking about these topics are always going to be risky on platforms like this, or whatever platform you might be listening to me on. These are the things they don't want discussed. They don't want you to be aware of these absolutely psychotic laws that they pass, like the one in Singapore. Most people say, well, they're never going to do that in America. Oh, no? Oh, no, they're not going to do it in America. How many Americans lost their jobs over this? How many military veterans had to, were thrown out of the army because they refused to put this in their bodies? How many doctors lost their practices because they questioned? How many people like you and me lost our social media accounts just for questioning and speaking against it and showing you how ridiculous everything they were saying was, and how they backtracked and they told you didn't need a mask and they told you did need a mask? These lunatics that we saw out at restaurants that were wearing bubbles around them. Remember all that stuff? I mean, there's people going out to restaurants who were in such a psychosis. They were sitting inside of bubbles at the restaurant. They literally walked in like Bubble Boy and were sitting at tables with their spouses, and they were so afraid of the common cough that they were willing to wear a bubble around their bodies, and we still see it. That might be the craziest and most scary part. And there's still quietly propaganda out there. If you just research it, you'll see, there's an increase in some countries all of a sudden. That's right, there's an increase, and the variants are still popping up around us because they need that to still float around, because they know there's people who are so unhinged and in such a psychosis still over it that if they even put out the slightest story, those people will run to their local pharmacy and take it. And those are the same people who will agree with the government and whatever they say and say, oh yeah, it should be a mandate. They should go to prison. They're harming me because they're not taking what I'm taking, even though what I'm taking is supposed to make me immune in the first place, because that's the purpose of a vaccine. Oh, wake up. We live amongst some of the most ridiculous sheeple in the history of humanity. So Bill Gates in Singapore at the same exact time that they passed this. And again, some of the other stuff that's out there with Bill Gates, if you haven't heard, he's tweeting out about how his net worth is going to drop 99% over the next 20 years. We're supposed to believe these liars, these pathological psychopaths, that Bill Gates is giving all his money away, right? I mean, how desperate are these people to create an image of themselves in the public that they care about everybody else, and I'm going to do my part for climate change, and I'm going to give all my money away to third world. What's taking so long, Bill? Bill, what's taking so long? Every day that passes, people are supposedly dying in third world countries of starvation, even though most of us don't even believe that propaganda. The people in third world countries don't want to be bothered by psychopaths like Bill Gates or Americans who want to push on their lives. They're fine living the way they live just because it doesn't look as glamorous as it does here in America, where people are driving around in $500,000 cars like Bill. People over there aren't having the problems that they're actually claiming. But Bill, what's the holdup? He says we have an opportunity to save more lives around the world, and he wants to do more to help. That's why he's giving away virtually all of his wealth through the Gates Foundation over the next 20 years. Yeah, and I'm Santa Claus. I mean, give me an utter break. Who's believing any of these people, from Buffett to Gates? They're going to pretend that, well, we don't have any wealth anymore, so you don't have wealth anymore, right? So when they have universal basic income, the people like Bill Gates are going to pretend like they're living like we are, which couldn't be a bigger lie, and only a sucker would fall for it. Probably the same suckers that are walking around wearing diapers on their face still in 2025. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.